Greetings to you all, and welcome back. So this time we're going to be tackling the game itself. Actually going to be doing a bit of gameplay, who would have thought. But first I guess I'll explain my little setup that I've got here. Top left is my superb logo, hours spent on that. Bottom left we have the guide that I showed you in the previous video. It is Mint Montgomery's guide on how to play the game. He was the world record holder. I will be watching that side by side as I play. He is going to be the one teaching me, and he doesn't even know it. The big screen on the middle right is me. Everything you see there is me playing the game, as I'm currently faffing about in the menu for some reason. I don't remember, okay. But what I'm doing here is I'm using an emulator to help me learn the game, and the reason I'm doing that is because emulators have the feature called save and load state. So what save state does, is very important you learn this, is that save state allows you to pause the game at a moment in time. Well, not pause, that's the wrong word. You take a snapshot of a game at a moment in time, and load state lets you return to that moment in time. And unlike saving and loading, it's instantaneous. So if you've got a jump you want to practice, you can save state before it, attempt the jump, and then load back. Try it again, load back, try it again. It's most similar to a quick save and quick load in more modern games. Now if you pay attention to the very bottom right of the screen, upcoming, my screen, so bottom right of the bottom right, you will see a telltale message in just a second. There. My save states weren't working. And the reason for this, and it's, it could happen to you, is because my ROM was still inside its zip file. And so the emulator didn't know where to place the save state file. When you save state, the emulator has to make a little file to contain the information. And it can't write direct to a zip file. So always unzip your ROMs before you use them in your emulator, or you won't be able to take advantage of the save state feature. But don't worry, now I fixed it. Now then, let's finally play the game, shall we? Just for the sake of variety, let's play the game. The first thing we need to do when we're playing the game, we're not learning strats yet. I think I am. I'm watching the video, don't mind me. The first thing you need to do before you start learning your strats for getting through a level is learning the basics of the controls. Now, you should probably have the basics of the controls down if you've got this far through the game selection process. But just make sure you know the controls. And I'll explain the controls for this game. I have 3 buttons because I'm on the Mega Drive, or Sega Genesis if you prefer. I can sprint, I can jump, and I can attack by waving a magician sheet, which I'm going to call cape. I'm going to call it caping. So those are my 3 buttons, and they map one-to-one onto the controller. Sprint needs to be held down, and you can see Mickey running now. When you're sprinting, he looks absolutely terrified for some reason. I don't know why, but that's how he runs. And obviously, sprinting is faster than walking. I see no reason why I would ever walk. Now that doesn't mean that in every game if there's a run you must always run, because games are different. Perhaps perhaps there's a game where you generate more sound when you're sprinting and being stealthy saves you time in the long run. I don't know. Depends on your game. But for me, I'm always going to be sprinting. And that's a thing you have to learn, that there's no downside to sprinting. You also need to check if there's any unobvious moves. In this game, the only thing that isn't immediately apparent, although the game does force it on you later, is that if you crouch and then press jump, you will crawl. I'm going to call it crawl. And that can be used to get through small gaps. Now, you do need this in order to complete the game, so it's not exactly hidden. But other games will have button combinations that you don't expect, like maybe B and C together will do something that the game doesn't explicitly tell you. Streets of Rage, for example, B is attack, C is jump, B and C is back attack. The game doesn't tell you this, but you'll figure it out if you play the game enough, I suppose. So just make sure you know every move that's available to you. Advanced movement time. So the eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that I did a little reset there in my video, and that something new has appeared in the top left. This is a frame counter, which does not exist on every single emulator. It didn't exist on the first one I was using. I was using Cake of Fusion. Now I'm using BizHawk. And what BizHawk does is it has a frame counter, which is tracking exactly to the frame, which is a fraction of a second. I believe it's a 60th of a second in this game, I think. Might be a 30th. It doesn't matter. It's a fraction of a second. It's consistent. It's very precise. And I can pause the emulator at any moment, and I can see the exact frame that I'm on. So I can see essentially how many split seconds I've played for, if you want to think of it like that. Now, why do I want a frame counter? I know my movement options, but what I don't know is which one is the fastest. And this is what I mean by advanced knowledge of the movement mechanics. Now you might be thinking, well, this is pretty simple, right? You just run to the right, always hold down sprint, because sprint is nice and fast, and then just jump over the enemies, and away you go. But let me put something to you. Should I attack? Like there's an enemy here. Should I attack him? Or should I jump over him? It's not obvious. And you need to test this. Now, between those two options in this game, it's easy to see what you should do. Because when you attack, you stop moving. Whenever Mickey attacks, he stands still and swings his cape. When you jump, you obviously keep travelling in the direction that you are running. So jumping is better in this game. But there are other games where jumping is slower than running. Sometimes just the horizontal speed is less when you're jumping. Sometimes there is what we would call landing lag, which means that when your character comes back down to the ground, he might lose some speed and take a few fractions of a second to catch back up to speed. And you need to know that, because if you're going to do 200 jumps over the course of the game, and that's probably an underestimate, and every jump costs you a fraction of a second, add them all up, you could lose 5 seconds because you're jumping when you shouldn't be. It's important, you need to know. And that's what I'm doing right here. I'm testing a variety of different things. I am trying to find a common visual cue that I can use. So at this point I'm testing using this tree trunk. And I'm saying, what frame is it when I run to the tree trunk? I'm looking at the moment when Mickey's hand is just past the tree trunk. What frame am I on in the top left corner? And then is it the same frame if I jump as I do it? That's what I was testing there. Now this game is particularly awkward because Mickey doesn't run in a straightforward pattern. If you look at the way Mickey runs, you see that his hands flail backwards and forwards, which means, and this is quite a complicated idea, but if I were to be one frame behind, I could visually appear ahead because Mickey's hand is wobbling forwards. Complicated, but that's why this took me so much testing. And if I just speed up now through the rest of the testing, you'll see that I actually tested it in multiple directions in order to try and get a feel for what's going on. And my overall conclusion is as follows. Jumping does not waste any time. You can jump freely whenever you want. Attacking whilst on the ground is terrible because it causes you to stand still. It's obviously really bad. Jumping and attacking at the same time doesn't cost any time. Unless you attack too close to the ground. If you attack too close to the ground, then when you land, you will still be in the middle of your caping animation, and so you will suffer landing lag until it's complete. And if that sounds complicated, that's why I called it the advanced section of movement. But I needed to learn this before I can start charting my way through levels, because I need to know what costs me time and what doesn't. So, summary, sprinting is good, jumping is good, jump attacking is fine so long as the attack is fully finished before I reach the ground. Okay, we know how to move. So I'm always thinking about movement options, even when I'm not specifically testing it. And we're going to move on for now. But as I'm playing through the game, I always keep a text document going on the side of everything that occurs to me. So you can see here I've had some thoughts that I want to test later, because I don't know how they might impact my speed and my time. Whenever I think of something, it will just get written down in the document, and we will approach it all later. But now I want to move on with actually learning the game. The very start of the game, for my game, is particularly easy. It's just run and jump over some enemies. This is the first difficult moment. It's this seesaw that you can see in the bottom left guide video at the moment, because it revolves around a specific trick. And I'll tell you what this trick is, but I won't go into detail on every trick in this run. This isn't a guide for learning Word of Illusion. But this trick is a jump that is, I think, frame perfect. If not, it's just very tight. And what's going on here is Mickey jumps on the seesaw, which causes the rock to go in the air. When the rock lands back on the seesaw, it catapults Mickey. But if you can jump on the same frame that you get catapulted, you get launched for miles. From a programming point of view, the catapult is giving you vertical speed, your jump is giving you vertical speed, they're combining, and you're going much higher, much faster than you should. Tricks like that, pretty common. You see lift jumps and things like that in quite a lot of games. This trick is kind of annoying because if you jump too late, nothing happens. If you jump too early, you jump off the seesaw before you get catapulted, and you just waste time. So when you're watching a speedrun and you see a trick like this, should you go for it? It's not an easy question. On the one hand, it's fun, which is important, but on the other hand, it is difficult, and the potential time loss here is great, and the potential time saving is very minor. And you should always do this sort of cost analysis on tricks. When a trick is difficult to do and doesn't save much time, you probably shouldn't worry about it when you're starting out. Now, if this was a skip that let me bypass a whole level, then I need to learn it. There's no way around it. I'm not competing with anyone if I can't skip. If everyone else is skipping a level and I'm not, then that's just, we gotta do it. But as you can see, this trick here, I can just ride the seesaws to the top. Getting the trick saves, I think, 3 seesaws. Maybe 2 seesaws. It's important for the world record holder. It's not important for me. So I practice it a bit here to gauge how difficult I think the trick is. I decide it's a bit too difficult, and that I'm not going to worry about it for now. And I would advise you to do the same if you find really difficult tricks like this coming up in your practice. Keep them in the back of your mind though. And if it's fun and there's no real cost to failing the trick, then by all means go for it. Moving on then, we're going to learn about a new trick now called the damage boost. Now what happens here is I deliberately get hit by the mosquito, which causes me to take damage and causes Mickey to flash. Whilst Mickey is flashing, he can't be hit again. He's essentially invulnerable. He can still die to pits and things, but he's invulnerable. That means I don't have to respect any of the other enemies. I can just walk through them. They can't knock me back or anything. Damage boost strats are generally easier to do than other strats, because of the fact that once you're invincible, you don't have to react to anything that's going on. You don't have to avoid anything. But Mint Montgomery has a trick up his sleeve. He has a faster way of getting through this section, using something called a crouch boost. Yes, a new movement option. By crouching at exactly the right moment on a sloped surface, you can bug the game into giving you a big surge of speed forwards. Now you'll see me attempting it here and failing it about 10 times in a row, and then promptly giving up. This is another trick, much harder than the first trick, and I was not good at getting it, and so I concluded that no, this is not for me. I went back to the damage boost, which was a lot easier, and then I practiced this a fair few times. This little jump section, it's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's a little harder than you think it is. And so, because I was struggling a bit, I thought, oh, we better practice this. Practiced it a dozen or so times until I felt more confident with it, and then we moved on. So that's it for the first screen, and we move on to the second, which is pretty much rinse and repeat. I'm just watching the guide here. I'm rewinding the video and rewatching stuff because I was seriously impressed by this screen because there was a lot of jumping going on. Specifically, there's one very hard jump here at this slope that you'll see me attempt a few hundred times. Once again, it's a trick that... this is a good example. Don't mind me, I'm just messing up my save states like a potato at the minute. But this is a good example here of a trick. If you get your jump just right, you'll land on the tiny step at the bottom of the ramp and you'll be able to jump straight up to the upper platform. I know the game's going light speed and it's hard to see, but just trust me, if I jump on the right spot, then everything's good. But if I'm slightly too early or slightly too late, then I'm not good. So I've got two options. First option is I can just ride the slope down like you're supposed to. The second option is I can try the jump, and then if I miss it, suffer the consequences. Well, what are the consequences? The consequences are I land one step too low and have to jump back up one step. That's not a big consequence. I don't mind taking that. And it's fun to do. So, I decide I like going for that jump down the slope even though it's difficult, but that's purely based on the fact that the penalty for failing isn't very high. Screen 3 now, we're going to see an auto-scroller in this one. For this point, I'm basically just learning the basic platforming. Taking notes as I go. Just continuing my way through the level then. Constant referral back to the guide is very important, and if you don't have a guide, you just have a run to follow, that's fine too. Just constantly refer back to it and see what they do. If there's a trick that's particularly difficult and you don't know what to do because you can't do the trick, then go watch a slower run and see what they do at that point. It's slower for a reason, they probably don't do as hard tricks. You'll find someone who doesn't do that trick, and you'll be able to see what approach they take. Anyway, here's the auto-scroller, and you'll see what I mean. This spider, he leaves a thread behind that we can step on, and it's the only way to cross the pit, and nothing we can do will speed him up. So I do it once, and I say, good enough. You don't need to practice auto-scrollers as much as the rest of the game, it's just a fact. Now we're going to learn to fight a boss. Do not be afraid of bosses. This is something that people feel about speedruns. They see a boss and they're frightened because you just did the level 1. And in order to speedrun level 1, perhaps it's quite difficult because you have to do precise jumps and tricks and things. And they think, well, the boss is the hard part of the game, right? For speedrunning, no. No, not really. There tends to be less precision in the bosses. Sometimes there's incredible amounts of precision. But for this game then, we shall say, the bosses are not very precise. They're big, they have big hitboxes. You have freedom to move wherever you want. It's not bad. Do not be afraid of bosses. It's not some rule that because they're the boss, they are the hardest thing. It doesn't apply. Anyway, immediately after the boss, we're back to an auto-scroller. There's not much to say here. You just fly at the bottom of the screen. I just copied everything that Mint did. It works. Practiced it a few times. Fine. The reason I'm not practicing these auto-scrollers too much is because I'll be doing it again later in longer runs. It's coming up. Now for a bit of fun though. We're going to learn to do a skip, a full-on level skip. Unfortunately, this level skip is really, really easy. All you have to do is trigger the left pillar that rises, and then walk back a bit so that it despawns, walk back to where it was, and it's no longer there, so you fall through it. Tricks like this, they look very fancy. Sometimes they're incredibly simple to do. Don't be misled when you see someone do a trick and you think, oh, that's a trick, that's too much for me. No, sometimes they're really easy to do. This one was, Sometimes they're really, really hard to do, but sometimes they're easy. Always give them a go. And this one just happens to be one of the easy ones. I love my first attempt at the cloud level, where I land and just immediately walk off to my death. Beautiful. The cloud level is one of those that looks somewhat impressive, I'd say, because of lots of small platforms, but you should be confident with your basic movement of jumping from small platform to small platform at this point, so it shouldn't phase you. And at the end of the level you'll see I do a blind jump to the right that you wouldn't normally do. Usually you would... Hang on, it's coming up. No, damn it, I reloaded. You stole my point. Come on, me. Past me. Okay, usually you would go left down those staircase of clouds at the end, but we've practiced the game. We know the layout of the level. We know we can just go to the right, jump down, and we will be fine. You learn this stuff just by watching once. Second boss time, and this boss is an absolute joke. I watch it twice in disbelief because I can't believe how easy it is. It's literally the same thing 6 times. A dragon spawns, it bounces to the side, you chase it, you swipe it, repeat 6 times. That's it. So easy, I don't even practice it twice. I do something much, much more important. I go back to the start of the game and practice everything in a continuous run. Now why do I do this? When you learn speedrunning, it's easy to learn the section you're currently looking at. But then when you move onwards past it, it's very easy to forget it. So I just did level 2, which was pretty easy. It was an auto-scroller, 1 platforming stage, a level I skipped, and the easiest boss I've ever seen. So I'm not afraid of it. I'm more afraid that I've forgotten how to complete level 1, if I'm being completely honest. So going back and doing a full run like this to check that I have my muscle memory down and the tricks and things cemented in my memory is more important to me. And this is why I don't spend too long practicing auto-scrollers, because I know I'm going to do practice runs in their entirety later, so I can just practice them during that. I actually died during the spider auto-scroller because I got impatient. Don't get impatient in auto-scrollers. It's very easy to get impatient because they're very boring. But try to stay professional. You'll see, I don't just do the full run once. I do it twice? 3 times? I don't know how many times I do it. We'll find out together. But every time I'm practicing this, I'm cementing something into memory here, and I'm learning little things. Like, I struggled to get into that plant just then, because I jumped at it from a wrong angle. I know that for the future now. Now let's see, am I patient? Oh my heck. Same mistake again. Exactly the same. I punished myself and made myself redo the first screen because I was so angry that I made the same mistake twice in a row. I got bored on the auto-scroller, and so when I got close to the end, I ran and jumped before I should have, and I fell. I'll tell you, this spider level gives me jip, but we persevere. Let's test our patience now. Lovely stuff. Here I find out the boss can actually approach me from a different side that I wasn't aware of. But it doesn't seem to cause me any issues. You take a hit, but you can see my health in the top left. I've got health to spare, it's not a big deal. A few deaths here and there are nothing to worry about. We're not at a point where we need to worry about deaths just yet. We need to learn how to actually get through the game. But hey, that was good practice. The rest of this video then is just me doing much of the same. It's a lot of consultation with the video, a lot of monkey see, monkey do, and I continue in this fashion until I've learnt the entire game. I could show you all of it, but I think you get the gist by now. There's no major points coming up that are different from anything I've been through before. These are the basics of speedrunning. Well, learning a speedrun at the very least. So what comes next? Well, learn the rest of the game, do more practice, especially the practice where you play multiple levels at a time, because by the time we get to the end of learning, the chances of us remembering level 1 is pretty slim. So you got to keep it fresh as you go through the game. But hey, once you finally get to the end of the game, as far as learning goes, you're ready to do a run. And that's what the next video is going to be. It's going to be my first ever run of Wall of Illusion. No tricks, no gimmicks, no deleting bad runs to make myself look good. It will be my honest first run, and if I die on level 1, I die on level 1. It will be what it is. But hey, hopefully you'll join me for that, and I shall see you then.